Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bitcoin News Weekly Live. It's been a sleepy holiday week, but the markets are opening back up. Things are going crazy. We've got heads of state being removed by helicopter. We've got China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, America. All these countries are fighting over resources and maybe even Bitcoin. Things are getting crazy. Let's dive right into it. We got an intro here that breaks down what happened over the weekend because this is sort of world-changing stuff we got going on. Let's dive in. The fog of the Maduro extraction is clearing, and the why beyond the Trump pressers is coming into focus. Despite the Don repeatedly saying Venezuela stole our oil, the Pentagon didn't move on Caracas for crude. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, but the quality of that oil is very low. It is heavy, sour crude, and that is high sulfur content, which only a handful of refineries worldwide can process. In fact, by some estimates, it would cost over $1 trillion to upgrade Venezuelan infrastructure to just have the country surpass Canada's exports of 3 million barrels a day. So while Trump uses oil as a way to make the Americans feel like they will directly benefit from this excursion, the real reason they moved was because of a convergence of three existential threats. We've got Chinese in control of AI critical minerals down in Venezuela. We've got Iranian drone manufacturing happening in the country, in Western soil, in the Western Hemisphere. And we have Russian military integration in the Caribbean. The Russians sold them the air defense that was supposed to stop this whole entire attack that did not happen as they planned. So Washington cared. If Washington cared about restoring democracy, why would they wait 13 years into Maduro's reign? The military brass felt a growing strategic vulnerability less than 3 hours from Miami and felt that they needed to act immediately. But while the media focuses on rare earth elements and degraded oil infrastructure, the real prize might be sitting on a hardware wallet in Caracas. For 8 years, the Maduro regime operated a shadow financial engine designed to be unfreezable. Since 2018, they've been liquidating gold from the Orinoco mining arc and washing oil proceeds through USDT into Bitcoin. The scale is staggering. Intelligence reports by whale hunting now point to a shadow reserve of roughly 600 to 660,000 Bitcoin. To put that in perspective, that is twice the size of the US government's entire strategic Bitcoin reserve. And it rivals the holdings of MSTR and BlackRock. If these numbers are accurate, Maduro and his cronies have been sitting on $60 billion life raft that will play as a linchpin in how the negotiations now play out. Washington likely knew about the secret stash since its very inception. Court documents now reveal that Alex Saab, a Venezuelan businessman who was the architect of this Bitcoin accumulation scheme, was a DEA informant since 2016. The capture of Maduro has now triggered a high-stakes interrogation, with the recovery of seed phrases likely playing a critical part. As news of this reported 600,000 stockpile begins to spread, the market is currently pricing this in as a massive supply lockup. Bitcoin is up over $5,000. Make that $6,000 since the abduction of Maduro went down. Under Trump administration, the probability of a fire sale of this Bitcoin is practically zero. Trump campaigned on the promise of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Getting Maduro to fork over the seed phrase would be an easy, budget-neutral way to triple its size overnight. Maduro's unfreezable asset could become the cornerstone of the American balance sheet, with the only stack larger being Satoshis. Bitcoin has always lived outside of the logic of violence, but as Maduro is finding out, that only holds true as long as you can keep the keys in your head. Welcome, everybody, to Bitcoin News Weekly. Today, I am very grateful to be joined by Phil.
Hey, what's happening?
Mr. Pleb Underground himself. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How about you? Thank you so much, by the way, for having me on your show. I really like your I like your intro. That's some good energy right there.
Thank you very much. I mean, we got to be fired up. It's Monday morning,
right?
And that's what we do. We get people prepared for the week. We distill all the information, everything that's happened in the last 7 days, into a nice 1-hour show for people to get the greatest perspective on Bitcoin and be ready for what comes next. So, Phil, welcome,
yes.
welcome. I would love to have you introduce yourself to the audience if anybody doesn't know about you or your show.
All right, cool. Well, I'm Phil, or on Twitter, I'm at Coin Icarus, or as of most recently, Clown Suit Coin Icarus, where I'm making fun of the Bitcoin treasury companies. I have been making Bitcoin content since 2018. I started off doing fun with Bitcoin. Back then, it was an audio-only podcast, just interviewing, pretty much anybody that I really wanted to talk to. People like Francis or Francis Pulio, or at the time, Dan Held. Guys like that, right? Guys that were in the space. I was learning, and I was a sponge, and for me, that was the fun thing to do. Did that for about 3 years, and then I was approached to start a different channel called Simply Bitcoin. Did that for a couple of years, and then after that, I left and started Pleb Underground. So now every single day at 12:10 p.m. Eastern, I go through the signal without the slop, and I talk about what's going on. And I give a bit of a different perspective, or at least I believe it's a different perspective, right? Every single person likes to believe that they're giving a different perspective. So, I believe that I'm giving a more less hopium-based, more reality-based type of perspective on the Bitcoin news and the stuff that's happening in and around Bitcoin. Because, as you know, a lot of what we see is massive sensationalism. And to a certain extent, if you are new to the space, you are going to think that a good portion of this stuff is accurate, especially depending on how you came into the Bitcoin space. Because if you came to Bitcoin because of its, let's say, its qualities, right? The transparency, the hard cap, stuff like that. You may be interested in truth. You may be interested in thinking critically and stuff like that. And unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that you end up seeing in the space leaves a lot to be desired in the by way of objectivity and, I guess we'll say, truth. So, yeah, I like to provide that much less popular opinion.
There you go.
That's what I do.
Yes, much respect for doing that job, because of course the sensationalism is done for clicks, and if you're bringing the truth, sometimes people, it doesn't get through to the people as much as the sensationalism does. So respect to you for carrying that flag and being honest and truthful and doing what your heart tells you should do. Bitcoin, of course, doesn't have a marketing department. We are all working for Bitcoin in some regard, and so we need to bring our own flavor and stand for what we believe in. And I think you've done that for years now. So respect to you and everything that you've done in this space. But let's get your perspective on the biggest headlines, because that's what we do here. Every Monday morning, we break down a Bitcoin News Weekly Live. The newsletter hits your inbox 7 a.m. Eastern, and then we go live with a new guest every Monday morning, 11 a.m., to break down the headlines. And this one, this weekend, it was quite the monitoring the situation weekend. I think many of us were glued to X starting from early on in the morning on Saturday, all throughout the day, trying to figure out what exactly was going on and how it would play out. And of course, there is a Bitcoin angle. So the title of today's newsletter is Venezuela's Ultimate Prize. Did the U.S. just seize a massive Bitcoin hoard? A weekend operation ousted a dictator and may have tripled the size of the U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, before we get into all of that madness, we'd like to start off with the adoption section. Some nice news, some light news, some technical news. This weekend, we also saw Bitcoin mark the 17th anniversary of its launch on January 3rd, 2009. The world was changed forever when Satoshi Nakamoto mined the Genesis block, setting in motion a monetary network that would permanently reshape global finance. So, Phil, how did you celebrate Bitcoin's 17th birthday?
I put out a tweet from the Pleb Underground account with a nice, colorful image of the white paper.
Beautiful.
That's what I did. Yeah, it's look, January 3rd is interesting, right? Because once upon a time, a guy named Trace Mayer started something called Proof of Keys. And for the people who were around at that time, Trace was and still an excellent an excellent speaker for Bitcoin on behalf of Bitcoin, we'll say, right? He can explain it in ways that most people cannot. And Proof of Keys Day was super popular, right? And it was the day that essentially, right, you decide to take your Bitcoin off the exchanges and into self-sovereignty. And it was supposed to be kind of like that memorable moment. I feel like, unfortunately, because of what happened with him and Grin and shilling that shitcoin and everything, nobody really cares about proof of keys anymore. So there was, long story short, I didn't do anything to celebrate January 3rd except the tweet, because there's no more proof of keys, because it's tough to, it's tough to validate shitcoiner behavior. So,
Yeah.
even though like the whole concept of it, right? It's got nothing to do with trace. It just, think of the symbolism. It makes good sense. And look, it is a best practice in Bitcoin, right? So, as much as some people want to believe that their Bitcoin is perfectly fine on exchanges, I can tell you, there's actually a, what's it called? A Bitcoin faucet that people may have heard of, freebitco.in. I'm not advertising for it or anything like that. But after 12 years, they're shutting down. So you may have been leaving your Bitcoin there collecting interest for the last 10 years or whatever it was. Well, guess what? Now you can't withdraw anymore. So everybody always thinks like, yeah, it doesn't happen to me. It happens to the other guy. But guess what? Once it happens to you, that's it. So proof of keys. Take your coin off the exchanges.
Yeah,
what about you? What did you do?
Brought up a lot of good points there. Yeah, we made a bunch of posts about that. We were just showing a video that came out, I believe, last year. Let me bring it up, but it's a really cool video. You should go check it out. It's the anatomy of the Genesis block, and it breaks it down from a technical view of all the different aspects of what went into the first Bitcoin block. It's just a 3-minute video. Go check it out when you have some time, but it's great graphics, illustrations with a lot of great technical information, and you see all the different components, of course. And Bitcoin was made in protest, right? Of the great financial crisis, of the bailouts of all the banks, and the promise of a new monetary system. So we made a bunch of posts talking about, from Andreas talking about, of course, the Genesis block, to this video. But I think proof of keys is a great legacy that should be maintained. And Trace has sort of reemerged last year into the community. It will be interesting to see if he continues on in 2026. But proof of keys, take your Bitcoin off the exchange. That's the only way you know it's really there, that you truly own it, is when you have it in cold storage, when you own the private keys that allow you to take it anywhere in your head across the world, 24/7. It's a beautiful technology. And if you don't understand it or execute your rights to it, then do you even really own it? But it's pretty amazing.
I agree. And once you realize how important those, and that's the interesting thing, right? The qualities of Bitcoin, unfortunately, with the exception of NGU, the other qualities of Bitcoin, you only end up, in my eyes, I only ended up appreciating them because I experienced being debanked. I experienced censorship with transactions. So for me, it was like, what is this? It's so interesting when the illusion breaks. You spend you spend a good portion of your life, saving up, trying to be fiscally responsible, all this stuff. I'm putting money in the bank, I'm putting money in savings. And then all of a sudden you slowly start to realize you're just asking for permission. And this is something that is known by, the majority of Bitcoiners. But to the people who don't know that, right? Like the system is so seamless that you don't realize you're asking for permission every time you quote unquote spend your money, or better yet, ask to spend your money.
Yeah, as soon as you put that money into the bank, it's technically no longer yours, right? They legally own it, and you're shit out of luck if you think that you can't do something wrong. That means that they will say, hey, we're not going to give it to you. But Bitcoin is so important in so many ways. And over the years, Bitcoin has been declared dead over 477 times. But an interesting fact of 2025, in the Bitcoin obituaries, there were 0 new recorded obituaries for the whole entire year. This is the first time in its entire history that this happened. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Is this a contra-indicator? Should we be worried about this? Lop put out this chart.
Yeah.
showing that the majority of obituaries, of course, came out in 2017, 2018, when it really broke into the global consciousness with the bull run at the end of 2017, and then had the subsequent crash. Since then, of course, the obituaries have gone down, and 2025 recorded 0. Very, very interesting. What's your take on this?
It's kind of funny because I'm also going to be talking about this later on today. So yeah, I mean, to your point, is this a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's genuine. I think it's, and I'm not even going to say the net positive thing. I think it's generally a good thing because it means that, or it could possibly mean that the mainstream media is finally bending the knee and realizing, okay, maybe it's not dead.
Maybe
so
it's not
I just, but at the same time, to maybe the cypherpunks and the anarchists, they may not be so happy because it signals Bitcoin being more widely accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
on the path.
I don't really want that, believe it or not. Which is kind of weird, right? Like some people, and I've heard this time and time again from older Bitcoiners, they're very happy to just have it as this niche, this type of niche asset.
Yeah. Well, I think for it to achieve its full potential, of course, these things are sort of necessary. I mean, TradFi is going to be here, right? To become the world reserve currency, a neutral one, you need to have the adoption of nation states, banks, hedge funds. I mean, this is just part of the rollout to becoming the most important financial asset that's ever existed. So it's a trade-off, of course. It's sort of like seeing your favorite band go from underground, where you love them and could hang out with them after the show and smoke cigarettes and drink beers, to them going and headlining a Warped Tour where they're too cool for you anymore. So it's interesting to see it grow over time and the new people that are attracted into this space as it does grow. But I'm going to go ahead and say it's a good thing. No more Bitcoin obituaries. We've sort of crossed the Rubicon, and now we're too big to deny and to think that it's just going to disappear. This thing is not going to disappear.
Nope. It's mature. I shouldn't say it's mature. It's maturing, right? And so we're right there. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Not even old enough to vote, right? Not even old enough to vote.
Yeah.
Still a year away from that.
But old enough to shake up the financial system, and old enough to make a lot of big institutions bend the knee. Poor Jamie Dimon ate a lot of crow this year. He was doing a whole lot of undo, and and a whole lot of, let me take that back and reframe that.
Yeah. And of course, he's using lines from 7-8 years ago of blockchain, not Bitcoin. Blockchain's great, but Bitcoin.
Oh, speaking of which, that's something else that we're seeing again, which I really appreciate. That also kind of helps I find the bullish case for Bitcoin. There's not a single piece of new FUD. Like I kid you not. Since 2018, I think I haven't heard a single new piece of FUD. I mean, think about it. It's all just recycled stuff. The latest thing, that there was some Kaz guy that was talking about how Bitcoin is old tech. Like, bro, that meme is from 2016. It already lost. It already failed. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so funny. These poor guys.
TCP/IP is old tech, man. Why would we even use it anymore?
It's garbage. TCP/IP. We should switch.
Speaking of tech, you've got a tech background. This might interest you. There's a new vibe-coded project called the Bitcoin Slam Bot that exploits the 9-to-5 pattern. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been seeing Bitcoin dumps during US hours and pumps afterwards. It flips short and long, this trade bot does, and is up 30% in 5 days after moving to perps. So vibe coding is all the rage. Claude Code, Opus 4.5. This thing is like changing the world. Are you vibe coding much? Are you using this at your disposal here?
No, I don't. I don't write any. I don't write any code or anything like that. I have forked other people's code and then modified it to do stuff, but that's about as far. Yeah.
But with this AI stuff, you don't like even I
Don't
don't
even
know
have
how
to
to
know.
write a single line of code and I'd be able to create something. That's what's really changing the world right now. And people are just being blown away. If you've got an idea, if you're an ideas guy, it's really the era of ideas guy is coming
Mm.
into fruition here, is coming into light. And this is a great example. This guy had an idea. Hey, Bitcoin dumps every single day at 9:30 when the markets open in America. And then it goes crazy overnight. So let's just create a bot to do that. And so he laid it all out right here, switched to perps because trading on Coinbase was racking up too many fees. But I mean, it's really interesting how this AI revolution, if you are agentic yourself, if you have ideas and the persistence to mess around a little bit, there's no more technical hurdles really for people to try to get slammed up on. So yeah, interesting. Slam bot. This was one of the most clicked things this morning when the newsletter came out. Not much of a trader myself. Do not recommend
Mm.
trading to
Nope.
anyone. Really, no. You just buy Bitcoin and hold and keep
Yep.
your labor saved in the hardest money known to man. But it is interesting, of course, the technical things that pop up each and every week around the Bitcoin universe. And this one definitely raised my eyebrows yesterday when I saw it.
I did mess around with I think it was the Base 44 app, just to see if I can come up with something. So it's pretty interesting, right? These platforms are fantastic at putting together like a front end for you. But the issue is this, right? Even though vibe coding has definitely lowered the barrier, if you don't know how it's supposed to actually fit together all the pieces in the back, then you could end up with just a vibe coded Potemkin village, right? With just a whole bunch of the faces of stores and nothing in the back. And I've seen some people do that. Again, I'm not bashing it. I'm just saying like it's. I have found that AI is about as useful as the person using it. So if the person knows what direction they're going in, they're going to be able to, I think, leverage it in a much better way than somebody who's just like, make me an app, and then they try to push it through on the app store and see what happens. Then there's a whole bunch of missing pieces in the back. So it's interesting.
Yeah, but I
Lower
also
the barrier.
I completely agree with you that if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you could just have a bunch of spaghetti code, and that is especially vulnerable, right? When it comes to security,
Mm,
you're definitely leaving yourself vulnerable there. But
yeah.
this is the worst it's ever going to be, right? It's only getting
Yeah.
better, and I really
Yeah.
think that it is what's happened in the last, I think, couple of months, literally last
Mm.
2 months with the latest Claude update has really blown people away. And if you've got an idea, I think it's worth going out and trying to do it. I need to make it part of my block off some time and just say, okay, even though you're not a coder, go around and around with this thing, because this is the hope of the future, right? This is the sovereign
Mhm.
individual. This is you being able to leverage technology, a hard asset like Bitcoin, and your time, and turn it into something completely new that allows you to have more freedom, whether it be
Mhm.
time freedom, money freedom, or freedom around the world. But
Agree.
one one outfit that is not into freedom is the HSBC.
Ah.
This popped up this week.
Yep.
HSBC blocks a customer's mobile banking access after detecting Bitwarden installed via F-Droid, highlighting the bank apps can monitor installed software and infer which Bitcoin-related tools users run. So this is
So,
pretty crazy. This
yeah.
guy is he's just running his HSBC UK mobile banking app, and then boom, warning pops up. We've identified Bitwarden on your phone. Dude, Bitwarden is a password manager. Why would they care?
It's for your protection.
It's for your protection.
They're protecting you.
Oh my
I,
God.
I mean, what kind of ridiculous nonsense is that though about Bitwarden, right? Like to your point, like when the hell has Bitwarden ever been a hacking tool?
Yeah.
It's a fantastic tool. It's a fantastic tool for privacy. Maybe that's what they don't like about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Most likely. And of course, this is happening over in the UK, which has really just dived headfirst into the nanny states since being run by Keir Starmer. They've got everything from the Online Child Safety Protection Act and multiple laws, also working, of course, on a CBDC over there in Europe and the UK. These guys, they're really just, they're the trial balloon, right? It feels that way. It feels like the English colonies, and of course England itself, are the places where a lot of these draconian technological overreaches are tried out first, whether it's the UK or Canada or Australia. They really like to see how far they can push it, and I think this is another example right in front of our faces.
I mean, it's this delicate thing. I don't know if you've noticed it yet, especially this cycle. I feel that it's gotten more apparent. You've got all these institutions talking about Bitcoin, but when you take a look at the rails, right? If you take a look at what they're building is the moat and the gates for stable coins, i.e., CBDCs. So in my eyes, I just, it's great. They say Bitcoin makes people happy. It gets, you can put posts out there that get you the clicks and the views and all that good stuff. But in the background, when you're digging into when we're digging into this stuff, they're not doing anything with it. It's all about the stable coins, and it's all about building the rails for, what they can do with their own token. So the whole reason why I'm explaining this is because their goal is the banking system has always been exclusionary. So for me, the idea that they're overstepping, right? Like that they're just like habitually line stepping is because they don't want you in another sandbox. They just want you in their sandbox. And that's it. And it's really scary stuff, because people are going to, like, what are you going to do, right? Are you just going to uninstall the Bitwarden app? You kind of need access to your money, right? And this is kind of the piece of it, which the Bitwarden thing, when I read this originally, I got totally thrown for a loop, because I use Bitwarden, right? Like it has a whole bunch of awesome tools, like the actual app itself. I like using it for the password generator and whatnot. But you can host your own instance. Like you can have your own Bitwarden server. You don't need to be connecting back to anything. What exactly is wrong with this thing? And it's so strange, because institutions like this can just make rules like this and offer absolutely no valid reason, with the exception of it's for your safety. I mean, look, you saw what they said there. They didn't even give, there's no actual real reason why. It's just for your safety.
For your safety. Yeah. And you bring up a great point about the CBDCs. And I think it's worth taking a look at this post from Congressman Warren Davidson over the last week. He published this. And he said, "What's going on in crypto? Flat or declining markets? Definite vibe shift. A few thoughts. Markets have stalled, in my opinion, because the disintermediation use case has been effectively destroyed in America. An account-based industry offers no distinct advantage over the status quo. A toxic combination of regulatory and legal malfeasance combined with legislative inertia have caused capital flight and user avoidance in America." And then he goes out and calls the Genius Act as a way of creating a wholesale CBDC. And that, I mean, he means that's like it's a private CBDC rather than a public one made by the government, right? But at the end of the day, it serves the same purpose. On the back end, all of the other characteristics of CBDC are being built while the massive deficits that undermine the value of the dollar continue unabated. Stablecoins offer the hope of more demand of U.S. treasuries, which may help lower rates and more broadly distribute the monetization of federal interest payments on our massive debt and deficits. So yeah, I mean, CBDCs, these stable coins, they are pretty much one and the same. And the reason why the government loves them so much is because they offer a new demand for our debt. Countries, of course, like China and Russia are backing away from buying U.S. treasuries, and they need a new buyer. And it looks like companies like Circle and Tether are going to fill that void, or at least that's the hope. So if they spread these stable coins around the world, then these stable coin companies grow. And in order to back up the stables, they need treasuries to do so. But it's very interesting to be seeing a sitting congressman actually sort of have his head wrapped around this issue, know what's going on, and calling it out too.
Mm.
Uh, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene echoed his sentiments, and she actually voted against the Genius Act because she thought it would lead to a CBDC. And there was supposed to be language in the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, that would provide the anti CBDC language that was supposed to be in the Genius Act. And that was left out as well, of course, at the end of the year when everybody's not really paying attention. So while they were campaigning very heavily on not allowing CBDCs in America, it seems as if the door has been left open, the back door, and we might have a quote unquote crypto president, but we are still in a sort of precipitous situation when it comes to the financial overreach and surveillance that come along with stablecoins and CBDCs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the point that I was making earlier, right? And actually, we should give a shout out to Mark Goodwin, because Mark Goodwin has been talking about how the U.S. government has figured out a new kind of like an infinite glitch to have customers for the treasuries, and this is exactly how they do it. So if we pay attention, right, what are we seeing? So we've got a lot of pride, and not that I have an issue with this or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, this is the landscape that I see. We've got a lot of military that has been privatized, right? So a lot of the work that the government used to do in the military has been moved over to the private sector. Now, why not just do I mean, if you look at companies like Palantir, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, all of this. I mean, this is all just government, right? These are all just government agencies with privatized and publicly traded to a certain extent. But what's it called? Sorry, I just had another brain.
Mark
Sorry.
Mark Goodwin and the.
Oh yeah, no, it was beyond the Mark Goodwin thing, but essentially, right, when it comes to these businesses, the government has found it much more lucrative to privatize all of this stuff. So if you look at companies like Palantir, right, why would we have the government monitoring when you can just have a private business that created a product that, hey, look, the government leverages?
Mhm.
Well, what about the money flow, right? It's the same thing. Hey, look, these businesses, we don't have a problem with them issuing dollars. Don't forget something else. It also removes in liability from the government. Hey, look, these businesses are just issuing, they're issuing stable coins. They have to buy our US treasuries, right? So now all of a sudden it becomes this symbiotic relationship where everybody's just working together. So the whole point I was trying to make is that it is this virtuous cycle of digital can kicking.
Mhm.
That's what they're doing. They're just like, hey, look, we couldn't kick the can down the road anymore with what we've done up until now. So we need new tricks. This is the new trick. And the beautiful thing about it, right? I shouldn't say it's beautiful, but for them, it's beautiful. They get to, and I've said this many times before, these institutions, all of this, I guess, all of these people, they are getting to borrow from the bank of Bitcoin. Right? Like they're not actually using Bitcoin, but they're getting to borrow from the credibility bank of Bitcoin because they're issuing these stable coins, and it's all being done under the banner of, we love Bitcoin. We understand hard money. We understand sound money. I mean, to the people cheering for the government taking seized funds and having a strategic Bitcoin reserve, I mean, that's pure statism. Why the hell would you want your government to do that? You should be hodling Bitcoin. You should be excited for your next door neighbor hodling Bitcoin, not some faceless entity that holds Bitcoin and pretends that they're doing it for national security. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, that was great. Yeah, of course. I mean, these are the conversations that need to be happening more. I do think that over the last year, we have gotten so wrapped up in things like companies buying Bitcoin and the president tweeting about Bitcoin, the president's son's having a mining company. I mean, that we've sort of got distracted from what's really going on here and what the ultimate purpose of Bitcoin is. It's to separate money from state. And the state is not going to want to give up that power easily. So I do think that we're sort of in the phase of co-option. right now. They're going to try as much as they can to sort of, as you said, launder the goodwill of Bitcoin, launder the image, the sovereign ideas that sort of line up so nicely against the founding principles of this country. But at the end of the day, they want to figure out a way to make it work for them, and it's up to us as Bitcoiners, as those with outlets, to make sure that we talk about what's really going on here and the possible dangers that we may face if we just so blindly follow them.
Well
So,
said.
what else do we have here? But we also have Bitcoiners who are facing some danger themselves. Wrench attacks against crypto holders are rising and are growing more violent, with the sharpest increases in Western Europe, France, and APAC, while North America remains comparatively safer. So there was Lop, of course, as we used one of his charts earlier today. But this guy, Hasib, he's a big crypto guy, but he took Lop's information, his statistics, threw it into a LLM and created some interesting charts that are worth taking a look at. And as you can see, the attacks per year by severity, they're going up. 2018 was a big year for it, of course, and it also corresponds with price, right? The higher the price, the more these attacks happen. But it also seems as if the severity of these attacks are going up. Back in 2014, it was 100% minor attacks. Now we've got a large amount of serious, severe, and even fatal going down. So you got to protect yourself. You should never disclose out in public that you have Bitcoin. You should not wear Bitcoin clothes in public if you can avoid it. And it's best to keep a lower profile about all this, because that's the number one way to avoid any of this ever happening, is if people don't know that you have Bitcoin in the first place. Have you been keeping tabs on these wrench attacks?
Oh yes. Oh yes, I've been keeping tabs, and of course, right? Jameson Lopp made that whole entire like directory of every single wrench attack he's ever documented. I mean, look, I report on them, not all the time, okay? Just because at some point, right? Like, how could I say this? People get really discouraged, right? Like it's just because if you're constantly just bringing bad news and the bad things that happen, because look, let's face it, right? When we look at the grand scheme of things, the number of wrench attacks versus how many, I guess you'd say, known people that have Bitcoin or crypto, like that number is fairly small in comparison to other types of crimes that are happening on a regular basis. So I forget what the numbers are exactly, but I was like, okay, so it's really not that much. But to your point, right? It's just obvious stuff that you can do. Like I remember when I first got into the space, I was all excited to go and get myself a Bitcoin t-shirt, a Bitcoin hat, and have like Bitcoin stickers on my laptop and Bitcoin stickers on my phone and all this stuff. And then I as I learned about Bitcoin, I was thinking that I had to change that method, like, because in the end, it's why are you doing this, right? It's like, why are you flexing this stuff? I mean, of course, people wear their favorite team, the jersey of their favorite team or whatever it is, but that doesn't usually incite violence. Well, depending, if it's soccer, maybe. So I don't know, maybe soccer games, I could be wrong about that one. But the point being is that, like, it's not something to flex. And something that we've seen specifically, I find in the last few years, is this desire to flex online. And you don't know who's watching, you don't know who's paying attention. And I think that some people, I've said this in the past, a lot of us don't really realize how cheap life is. You may value life a lot, right? I may value life a lot, right? To the point where, you would never harm somebody unless it was like, some type of life and death situation and you have to survive or something like that. But there are countries, right? And not just countries, but there are people who, even in North America, like in the States, even that, they grow up in very difficult conditions, and to them, life is cheap. So you may sit there and think like, oh, like my 200K's worth of Bitcoin is nothing. They're not going to want to rob me. Well, if you keep flexing that, to somebody who has nothing and has nothing to lose, that's everything.
Yeah.
To them, that's life-changing money. So it's something about perspective, right? Like and it's really, and I know that a lot of people don't want to get down into this because it's very difficult. It requires us examining ourselves, but you got to ask yourself, why do I feel the need to flex my ability to waste resources more than my fellow man on the internet? Why do I feel that need? Could be insecurity, could be ego. Whatever it is, it's just nonsense. It's just complete nonsense. Sorry.
No, you're right. And I like the fact that the Bitcoin culture as a whole is more humble, right? Crypto, on the other hand, is much more about when Lambo, Moon Boy showing off your Rolex, the whole Richard Hart lifestyle of buying out a Louis Vuitton store. But that's the type of stuff that attracts jealousy and I think some of these attacks. So one interesting tidbit is you were right that according to this, crypto was actually more dangerous in 2015 and 2018, back when crypto was very small. Yes, there were many fewer attacks back then, but they were exponentially fewer holders of crypto. So from 2015 to 2025, Coinbase monthly active users went from 2 million to 120 million. That's a 60x increase, but the violence has not grown proportionally. So there's power in numbers here, but still the same rules apply.
Can I just address here what Nima said in the chat? So Nima said, I really doubt that all these are all the cases. But a lot of them are reported. That is exactly right. Right? Like for every single one. So that's a good question, right? For every single one that is reported, what do we think? The unreported, is it 5? Is it 5 to 1? Is it 10 to 1? Seriously. It is something to think about, right? So, and in all fairness, from what I've seen, again, these are the stories that have been reported. And it's not victim blaming. It's just understanding the scenario. The majority of these people were flexing all the time, and they were flexing online, and they were showing $500,000 watches and stuff like that. And it's like, look, there's, again, it's not victim blaming, but like, you got to realize the world is not all, a whole bunch of nice people that want your well-being. Anyway, sorry.
No, 100%.
I'm Canadian, so I apologize a lot.
Sorry. No need to apologize. But one thing that we really should talk about right now is that if you are getting into Bitcoin and you want to get it securely, you want to get it safely, then you got to check out our boys over at Rhino. What are they doing? Rhino is building an all-in-one financial Bitcoin banking app. Back in the day, as of a couple of years ago, getting access to different Bitcoin financial services was slow, clunky, scattered across all these different platforms. Bitcoin is now changed because Rhino is fixing that. Rhino is the next generation Bitcoin banking app designed to handle all of your Bitcoin needs in one place. What can you do? Of course, you can buy Bitcoin with some of the lowest fees anywhere. Get more sats per dollar. Make payments on the Lightning Network. Send it instantly, of course, with near zero fees. You can send cash globally. You got Bitcoin. You can actually just send cash to somebody who doesn't have a Bitcoin, and it sends across the world fast, cheap, easy, perfect for remittances. You got friends or family in a different country. And of course, you can DCA, set up automatic savings, whether it be percentage buys or timing, buy it every day, week, month, whatever fits your schedule. Go ahead and save Bitcoin that way. And Rhino is just getting started. Soon you'll be able to, of course, pay bills, direct deposit from your paycheck straight into the Rhino app to buy Bitcoin, borrow against your Bitcoin, and even save for retirement. Come on, guys. And of course, security is a top priority. Rhino protects your Bitcoin with biometric verification, 24/7 fraud protection, and confidence of knowing your Bitcoin will never be rehypothecated. And for those of you who are serious about security and got a multi-sig setup, if you have one with Casa, you can use the Rhino app as one of your keys for your multi-sig setup with Casa. And of course, you always advise to withdraw to cold storage. And with Rhino, that's of course very, very easy. Send it to your own hardware wallet, and boom, you've got top of the line Bitcoin security. So go ahead today, download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com, or just tap the link below in the YouTube description. And if you use the code Bitcoin News, they'll give you $10 of free Bitcoin straight into your account just to get you started. Rhino is built to keep you in control of your Bitcoin every minute of every day. Shout out to Rhino. Huge fans of the team, the company, everything they got going on. Check them out. Huge thanks to our boys over there. Phil,
What's up?
We got to talk about Venezuela.
Yeah, we do.
What was your feeling? Did you
initially?
Yeah, when you first heard
initially, I thought it was just fake. And it's funny because I saw the post from Bitcoin News. I'm like, oh damn, so I saved it. So I'm like, okay, I got to go dive into this, right? I'm not saying that you guys faked it. I'm saying I think they don't have that Bitcoin is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, my immediate reaction was like, okay, so we're gonna try to make this whole thing about Bitcoin, right? But look, the more reading, and shout out to Lola Leets, because she gave me a whole bunch of follow-up sources as well to dive into this. And okay, so at this point, right, what we know is that they claim, right, Venezuela claims to have this Bitcoin number one, but it's unverified. Like there is no actual, from what I saw, there is no actual proof of these Bitcoin holdings. The second thing of it is that this guy, Alex Saad, that you mentioned before, right, who I did not know, by the way, what did you say? He was a DEA agent?
He's been an informant since 2016.
Since 2016. Okay, so this is very interesting. Informant since 2016. You know that he's the only one, if I'm not mistaken, I got to go back and take a look, but he's the only one that actually he's the only one who knows how to access that Bitcoin that they have. So Maduro has, he's got no access to that. So the real question is Alex like the most powerful guy in Venezuela right now? He's Alex Saad, right? I never heard this name before yesterday, and now he's super interesting.
Yes, I mean, there's so many layers to this story, and I mean, I think we should go back to the top. For a couple of months now, we have seen increased activity when it came to the U.S. and Venezuela. Just out of nowhere, we started seeing the U.S. government just like tomahawk missiling these narco boats out in the Caribbean, right? And that seemed a little outside of the norms of international law, to say the least. But they say, hey, these guys are terrorists. They're bringing in drugs into our country. We can eliminate them. It's totally within our right. Okay. Well, then they started bringing in the largest aircraft carrier at our disposal and essentially blockaded the country of Venezuela and have boarded 3 oil tankers before this whole entire Maduro excursion happened. So they blockaded this country. And the question is, what is going on here? Like, why now? Why are they so worried about China, about Venezuela? Well, it turns out that, of course, Venezuela is playing a large role in sort of the de-dollarization of the dollar, right? Of what's going on. They are, of course, big friends with all the BRICS countries, and they are sitting on objectively the world's largest oil reserve. And what happened since 2018, they've been selling oil for currencies other than the dollar. And who else famously decided to do that? Of course, Saddam Hussein in 2003, trying to sell oil for euros and not just dollars. So if you go up against the petrodollar system, you should expect some knocks on your door, and that is exactly what happened. So we went from blown up narco ships to a blockade of oil tankers that were selling oil to China, to a straight up extraction of a president of a country, going in there in the middle of the night under the shield of missiles, sending in a helicopter of special forces into Caracas to the safe house, guarding Maduro and taking him out within 6 minutes and bringing him back to America. So, I mean, this is just absolutely out of Hollywood type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And many people, of course, Europeans in particular, are saying, hey, goes against international law. What are we doing here? But we're going to sit back and we like the fact that Maduro has been removed, but this goes against international law. We're going to continue to monitor the situation.
Mm.
But I think it just goes to prove the point that at the end of the day, in the competition between nation states, it's anarchy, right? And he who has the biggest stick is really the one who makes the rules. And I mean, the fact that they could just go out and do that, I mean, it raises a lot of questions. What is going on here? Is the world being divided into sections? Is the Monroe Doctrine fully enforced now, where America is in control of North and South America, and they want to get all of our enemies out of this hemisphere? Because, I mean, what do we have we had China taking resources from Venezuela for AI, for the EV building, silver, oil, gold. We had Iran had a drone manufacturing system, like ecosystem set up in Venezuela. They're making drones in Venezuela. And then we had Russian military components too, where they were selling them defense, air defense, radar. And so it was like the three sort of enemies of America were all situated in our hemisphere right there in Venezuela. And again, that's a 3-hour flight to Miami. So just as in the Cuban Missile Crisis, we couldn't stand having missiles that close to our southern border. Now we can't stand having drones that close to our southern border. So, I mean, I'm sort of a geopolitics nerd. That's what I studied in college. International relations, sort of a worthless degree in many regards, but something that I was very passionate about. And so, I mean, all this stuff is extremely interesting to me. I've been writing about it as it's been happening over the last week. And before we get into the Bitcoin part, I'd just love to hear your take. I mean, do you think this shows the strength of America, the weakness of America? Is this the beginning of a multipolar world, or is America just reasserting itself as the top dog here?
There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. There's definitely a lot to unpack. Okay, so it depends on. I think it depends on the narrative that you want that you want to believe, because there's all these different stories, and then somewhere in between all of these stories is the truth, right? What's actually happening. So some people could argue this is just late stage empires, right? Like I don't know if you ever read the book the Empire Clock, but essentially what that book details is the rise and the subsequent fall of every single empire, and how they failed, what it looked like when they were failing. And in all fairness, what we're seeing right now does look a lot like late stage empire, meaning that it was relatively inexpensive and easy for the US to do a show of force by doing this particular operation. It's like, the way I kind of see it was like, it's low-hanging fruit, right? But it serves a purpose, right? It actually maybe even serves a multi-pronged purpose, to your point, is that it ensures keeping the enemies, so to speak, at bay, right? And at the same time, it also serves as a warning to other countries, right? Specifically China and Russia, who may be enticed to try something that they normally wouldn't. Well, it's like, look at what we can still do, right? It's like, look at what we can still do. And so, to me, I think that's one direction that we're seeing. The whole thing about carving out the world, I think that's already been in play for such a long time. You can kind of see it where you can look at, let's say, the US, and even parts of Europe. Well, maybe not good portions of Europe, but there's consumer nations, right? And there's producer nations. So you go to some places in the world where that's where all the factories are, or the majority of the factories are, and you go to other places in the world, and this is where the majority of the consumers are. So we're already starting to see these divides. So yeah, I think to a certain extent it was a show of power. I'm not 100% sure that the U.S. cares about Venezuela's Bitcoin, though, and the reason I say this is because um, this last year should be proof to a certain extent of the carrot on the end of the stick, right? Where the politicians wave the Bitcoin carrot. There it is. Yeah, we love Bitcoin and we're going to pass this legislation. And remember, we love Bitcoin. And it's just, it's part of this whole entire show. So, but the reality is that what have they actually done for Bitcoin? Like, what was that gaslighting thing with the, and I don't mean to switch off of it, but where stable coins are going to have zero capital gains tax, but Bitcoin is still like it's a stable coin. Of course, it has zero capital gains tax. So what? You're going to charge me zero capital gains on yield? So fake tokens from a fake token, like it's just pure gaslighting nonsense. So again, I know it's maybe part of the game theory, like the whole entire the Bitcoin Trojan horse. But make no mistake, even if it's part of the game theory, you have to make no mistake. The people that work for the state and that have been thoroughly brainwashed to believe that there is no power beyond the state, they do not see Bitcoin the way that you and I do. It's just a tool to further their power, their control, their moat. That's it. It's a tool to do those things.
Well, it actually was serving a use case for Venezuela as they were extremely sanctioned, right? and they needed a way to move that money. And so, I mean, we've got some interesting little tidbits we can still talk about here when it comes to, I mean, over the last couple of years, they had seized multiple large Bitcoin mining facilities, citing illegal power use. But I mean, you look at these videos, I mean, Venezuela's got a lot of oil. Then you got these guys in sweatshirts with government thugs behind them going in and raiding crypto mines, right? Bitcoin mines. And there's a lot of miners right there. And so why would they not go and use that to their own benefit, right? And then we've got Javier Bastardo. He's a Bitcoin journalist. And he says, for years, Venezuela had mid to large size Bitcoin mining operations running, and there was a centralized entity charging people both Bitcoin and USDT to use those miners, even bribing them off record. It's also known that there were some sanctioned oil operations running these kinds of payments. It is possible that a large amount of alleged Venezuelan Bitcoin reserves were never disclosed and are under some shadowy individual's control, not part of institutional structure.
Like Alex Saad?
Like I like this bro, Alex Saab, DEA informant since 2016.
This is great.
But if it really is 600,000, as this whale hunting article reports, I mean, that's a legendary amount, right? They say that they bought. Yeah, I mean, you're coming up right behind Sailor, BlackRock, and about half of a Nakamoto there, right? So it's interesting things. And I agree with you that the governments don't necessarily look at Bitcoin as we look at it, but I end that with yet. Just yet.
To your point, right? There's always this story about the fifth pillar, right? These people that work in the government high up that are Bitcoiners. And they understand, right? But they can't show that they understand, and they can't be like, "Yay, we love Bitcoin. We're going to make everything about Bitcoin," because it just, quote unquote, undermines national security. But I have had this, I guess you can call it hopium, that there are these people, and maybe Warren Davidson is one of them. I kind of get that feeling that he's one of them. I know that people would like to believe that Cynthia Lummis is one of them, but anyways, I'm not going to go there. I know that she has attempted really hard and has managed to end her career on a high note. So good for her. But yeah, I'd like to believe that there are these people in the US government, and they are absolutely, kind of pushing the scales in a way that tilts it so that Bitcoin does succeed, but they can't make it obvious, right? It's almost like the stable coins have to seem to fail by their own volition, which they will. They will end up failing by their own volition, because the reality is that there's not a single government that can't not print. They have no choice. And especially when it comes to the US, the amount of debt that we have, like that, going back to your point about what's it called? The chancellor on brink of second bailout article, right? To your point about that. the whole thing was that from that moment on, it was known that there was never not going to be printing ever again. This is the only tool they have, and it has always been this. So, it's like, that's it. They let the smoke out of the board, and it's over. I do believe I do believe it, but sometimes I get into my own head. Government hates us.
Well, we got some comments over in the chat here. We got Nima saying, I think one of the biggest reasons the U.S. did it is that it knew it does not have consequences. Caracas could not retaliate, and the U.S. knew that. Well, I mean,
good point.
Yeah, but we made a lot of big players angry with what we just did. That's for sure. Whether it's China, or Russia, or whatever. We got BTC Moon Guy, one of your guys. He's saying, geopolitical Phil, let's go.
Good morning, BTC Moon Guy.
And we got plastic O2D. U.S. and Trump will have more influence on crude oil prices, and that is a big blow against Putin. So yeah, I mean, with all this oil, I mean, they could theoretically keep a barrel of oil under $50, and that would financially starve countries like Russia, like Iran. So I think from the grand geopolitical stage, if the U.S. could keep oil prices down and thus keep inflation low in America while exporting all the debt via stable coins to the developing world, they can sort of debase the currency without having inflation get out of control at home, and thus allow them to sort of tackle this, what will soon be $40 trillion of national debt. And I think they also see Bitcoin as sort of an escape valve, where if this inflation gets pushed into Bitcoin, it doesn't really hurt people as much as, say, housing prices going through the roof or healthcare and education, right? All right, Phil. Wow, that hour zoomed by. Want to give a big shout out to everybody live in the chat. Thank you so much, Pamela. Don't forget to hit that like button, guys. Share this video. Give it to people who are new to Bitcoin. Let them get a taste of what we talk about here, because Bitcoin touches everything. As you can see in this conversation, it is really at the center of so many different topics. And it's amazing to have guests like Phil to come and break it down with us. So, Phil, I know you got a show soon, right? So please tell people where to go to follow you next.
Okay, well, join me on YouTube or Twitter at Pleb Underground, and going to be live at 12:10 p.m. Eastern to break down all of the fun stuff that's going on in Bitcoin. Dude, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really enjoyed it. This was a lot of fun.
Cheers. Absolutely. You obviously got the chops. You're used to doing this. It was a lot of fun to break it all down with you, and got to have you on again in the future.
We've got to get you on Pleb Underground. So yes, I'll do that. Very cool.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, sign up for the newsletter. Hits your inbox 7 a.m. Then we go live at 11. We got great people every single week. Go watch Phil's show next. Until next time.